Alright, this is the St. Nicholas Church, the maintenance review for the boiler room. Just a general review of maintenance and how the equipment works. Even for any future problems, a good reference video for you guys to remember what's what and what to look at. We're going to start out with the boilers themselves.
Your name, Steve?
My name is Steve Terrian from Terrian Mechanical, and this is Brian Rushton from Viking Controls. The heating component, the main heating component, is the two boilers themselves, which work in conjunction as one main boiler through a master control on the opposite wall, which we will look at in a moment. The boilers themselves are going to run on a high-low fire depending on the outside air temperature. So the colder it gets outside, the warmer the water is going to be in the building. And opposite, obviously, if it's warmer outside, the temperature is lowering. That circulates through, saving money. The unit has display screens on each one that do have some readings that are still accurate, but most of this display has been taken over by the master control, making these tie in as one main unit. The only thing that is still functional on these at the moment seems to be that the supply and return water temperature in a modulation level, which is telling you how much gas is being fired from the unit at a time. On a bar system, you'll see the black bar go across the screen. It's just telling you that the unit's ramping up and firing more gas to heat up the water faster. Typical operation is going to be no screen, which is a dark screen. If you touch the control panel at all, it should light up blue. That means everything's working fine. The boiler itself has its own integrated circulator, which moves the water through just this boiler. It has to stay in motion anytime this thing is firing. If this circulator doesn't work, the screen is going to turn red. In fact, the screen will turn red on any fault, whether it doesn't have supply or return air, any kind of a reason why this unit can't fire itself up. The screen is actually going to start to display and start flashing red. It will reset itself after about 20 minutes. If it doesn't reset itself, then you'll have to call us to come back down for maintenance. But obviously, if it's flashing just once, the other unit's going to take over and get the system up and running. But if it's a continued problem where it keeps flashing red, obviously give us a call. We'll shoot down and see what's going on. The first thing to look at, if it does flash red, just out of common sense, is going to be make sure this pump is operational and it's got power to the unit. You should be able to feel a small hum, very slight hum, nothing big, but you should be able to feel some kind of movement out of that pump telling you there's circulation through this core unit. Now what happens when this unit is, you have the two units are going to fire off and create about 180-degree water. And what they do is they're going to supply water to a primary loop that is just above the boiler, keeping this loop at about 180 degrees on a cold day all day long. Now that water is ready to go when the building calls out. That circulates within this small 5-foot span and stays there until your primary pumps call for any thermostat in the system, which are these pumps here. So if any thermostat at all that you want heat in any zone of this building, these pumps will come on and start circulating water throughout the system.
Steve, getting back to the boilers, there was an emergency switch that was cut off by one of our parishioners at one time. Can you just explain what the function of that is and why it can cause damage?
There is an emergency switch by code on each piece of equipment, more for service, or if you ever saw any major problem with the boiler, there's an emergency switch overhead to kill the power. But if you're going to do any kind of a maintenance, or you had any kind of a slight issue inside the building that you want to turn these boilers down, I wouldn't recommend on a cold day when this thing's red hot is to just go killing that power switch. I'd recommend that you turn the thermostats down in the building, let the units cool down a little bit, and then pull the service switch so that the unit core isn't at 180 degrees and coming to a cold stop, which isn't good for the unit itself.
So there's no reason for us to touch those switches whatsoever.
Maintenance, any major problems.
But as far as us as members go, we should never touch them.
There should be no. This is strictly for maintenance or emergency.
What was the reason? Why did someone actually turn those off?
It was too hot upstairs. The radiators weren't under control yet. And we had told him a couple times there's valves on the radiators and balancing equipment on the radiators at the time. They were too hot, so his reaction was, well, I'll just kill the whole place.
Okay.
Which,
So now we can turn the thermostats down.
Correct.
now you have total control of all 4 of your zones, you know, there shouldn't be a problem. Again, if something does get hot, you certainly still don't want to come down and kill this system.
Yeah.
Look at each zone individually. Pull the wires off the thermostat before you go shutting the switch.
Yeah, well, there's no need to do that because thermostats can be turned down. And
Yeah, it should be, it's,
turning the thermostat down
Yeah,
will
pretty
do
simple.
it.
Right, so the issue was just simply the thermostat controls weren't in place, right?
Yes.
alright, so I think that's about it on the boiler. Now, on the boilers themselves, there's condensate generated because it's sucking in outside air coming in and exhaust going out. So when you create that cold air coming in and it's getting burned, you're gonna create condensation. The condensation is dripped on the side of the units, on each unit with the PVC drain lines around the unit over to a small sump pump. Occasionally, the pumps or the PVC might back up. You might see some water on the floor. Again, it's not a drastic situation. If there's water on the floor near the condensate drain line, it might be something as simple as there's some debris in the plastic drain line. It just has to take a small snake and stuff it through to clear the way so this thing keeps moving. But something like that could shut the boiler down because it's going to sense that everything isn't in operation.
Now, a point of interest is you can tell when the boiler is firing. This red light just came on. This boiler is firing that right now. That's the control relay. You'll see these on the pumps, on the boilers. When the light is on, it's active. Just so you know if something is running or not. So right there's an indication, and it actually lit up when it came on.
Yep. The boiler's calling. Start firing up once more. Temperature.
That was on cue, by the way.
There you go. That's it.
Yeah.
Turn the thermostat. Good job, Mark, pumping the thermostat up.
Yeah.
There is safety devices on the boiler in the back. There's blow-off reliefs in the back, which if the boiler exceeds a certain pressure or temperature, water again is going to come out of the back. There's a piece of copper pipe in the back. There's a safety device on each boiler. Water comes out of that. Again, look at the boiler. See what the temperature is. Make sure they shouldn't really go above 180, 185 degrees, which is accurate on the blue screen. Again, but that's now you get into a maintenance issue that if that goes, you call us. We'll come down and see what's going on. I really don't want you guys touching a hot boiler, and we'll take care of that.
Steve, I don't mean for you to repeat yourself, but the issue with the flues again, can you just remind us about the need to maintain clear flues all the way to the roof?
Every heating season, or especially in the fall when you get leaves flying, the plastic lines go from here all the way up and penetrate the roof on the side of the building near the kitchen wall. You'll see the vents on the roof. Now the two 4-inch lines have to be maintained and cleared to make sure there's nothing in them, on them. That air has to move. You got to have air coming down into the boiler and air exhausting out of the boiler. If some reason, if a bird makes a nest on top of the pipe, stopping that air from coming in, that unit is not going to fire. Again, that's when your red screen's going to flash and it's going to tell you that it's got no air intake. So something's blocking it. It could be something as maybe a couple of leaves. There is some screens in place on top of the unit, so nothing should be able to get deep inside. But I have seen birds make nests even on like chimneys and stuff like that. Squirrels, you know, silly, stupid things, but it happens. All right, back over to the main pumps for the heating system. The heating system, what it is. All set?
Yeah.
All right, the main pumps for the heating seasons, the system. There's one main loop that goes out and comes back, and everything else branches off of that main loop. So anytime that any of the units are calling for heat, again, you're going to see your red LED light up on the pump that is in the on position. If everything's satisfied, the LED is down. Actually have power, so it's going to be on.
It's going to be on.
That it's calling. So when it tells you that pump should be in motion.
So is there a red control switch similar to what the boiler has there?
The LED, when it's calling, the LED is going to tell you it's coming on.
Is there an LED on the pump?
It's the same thing on the pumps because it's calling for heat.
At the switch next to the pumps, right?
Yeah.
Right.
There's
the
an
switch.
LED there?
Yeah, there's an LED that tells you that system's enabled.
It's calling, it wants, you know.
I mean, they
wants
both
something
lit
to
up
do.
at the same time, you have to manually decide which pump you wanna run, so.
Okay.
Like
Just
the
because
other
they're
one,
both on, you don't turn them both on, just turn.
Yeah, it should only be one pump at a time, just enough to do this system.
But the control system's not dictating which pump's gonna run?
No.
It will not do that automated. That's gonna be a manual control that one pump runs this whole building. The reason for the two pumps, obviously, if one fails, you can always run the heating system, take that pump down, replace it, repair it, without losing heat in the building. So you can isolate it with the valves. You have a valve in the front, and this is actually a three-way valve, which is a check valve, a flow control valve, and it's actually a positive shut-off valve. So if this thing does fail, you can shut this off, you can shut this off, pull the pump out, do your work, and then the whole time you can leave the heating system going in the building without any interruption. And these should be changed out, the electrical power feed for these should be switched out, say, every month. Turn one on, turn one off. I think the pump recommends that you do an oiling on the pumps once every couple of months, which is this. There is a small oil cap on the very top of the motor hub on both of the units. There's some oil that we left here. 10 drops of oil is plenty for each pump.
Who's the pump manufacturer?
That's a B&G at Bell and Gossett.
Okay, so we have a manual for that?
There is a manual from there, and it tells you about the maintenance and everything else on it. That should about cover that, unless you got anything else on the pumps.
No, that's it for the pumps, that's it.
And you come back around. Now, just so you know what some of the components are in here. This is an expansion tank for the heating system, which has basically a giant basketball inside. When the water heats up, it needs somewhere to move and go. And then what it does is presses against that basketball, so it has a little bit of bladder room, somewhere to move, somewhere to expand. And then up top in the middle and the front is just an air separator system. So as the water supply goes through your system, it's going to take out any small air bubbles, and it's going to force it to the top of the tank, which then goes to a small air vent, which should purge out any air that's trapped into the system. You do have sensors on these main lines. Not that you should have to touch them or do anything with them, but there is wiring on the one on the main supply,
What's the purpose of the
one on
sensors,
the main
Steve?
return.
Just to monitor temperature?
That's for the main computer, that it knows what's going on in the system. And that's what's going to tell it to either heat up or stay down when the demand starts to come online.
Yeah.
And
That,
then
the main panel has, water sensors and outdoor air sensors, so it's using all those sensors to calculate what the water temperature should be and the system should run, so. It's nothing you touch, it's all
Automated.
It's all automated, there's nothing to be automated, there's nothing to be
So,
touched.
just one last question, Steve, on that sump. It's discharging over to the main
That,
sump pump?
that does not just shut, that just stays as it was out to the sidewalk, to the side of by the back door by the church.
Okay, that's the sump pump from the boilers for the condensate.
Boiler room, and
Okay. All right, I don't know if you want to take over, Steve, or Brian, or...
we'll let Brian take this one. He's dying to get out there.
This is the main control panel. This takes over all the functions of the boiler when we need heat and when we don't need heat. This turns the system on an outside air temperature of 60 degrees. Once the temperature drops below 60, it enables the system. So above 60, the hot water system's disabled, and below 60, it's enabled. Now this turns the pumps on, decides if it needs 2 boilers, 1 boiler running. It's all automatic. There's nothing to be touched in here. So it's basically does its own thing. The power goes off, it comes back on again. It saves all the settings, so you don't have to worry about the power going down and losing the settings of this thing.
Now, Brian, that light, why is that red light on? Just to let you know the system's on?
Well, this is something different. The red lights are on, meaning that something's calling to run. It tells you you have power to the system, and boils are enabled or the hot water system's enabled. You know what I'm saying? These lights over here are basically just let you know this thing's enabled and running. They will go on and off depending on what mode we're in. On the this light is actually for the air handler up in the hall.
Okay.
So we must be in unoccupied mode right now. This light's on. It flips back and forth depending on the thermostats. There's nothing really you need to know about these lights here.
Should, like, well, you said that's the air handler, should that be marked?
I can mark it, yeah, but you won't.
No, we won't touch it.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I mean-
there's nothing to know about, but I'll mark it. That's the air handler. This is the hot water system.
So it's just to know that the air handler is connected and ready to...
Yeah, we have the way when we connect components up to it, it's what we use. connect a component up to it, and it happens to be lit up. Some don't have lights on, but this has a light on it. And there's really nothing you need to know as far as that light goes. It really has no indication about, the unit up there. Not like these other pumps. When those are on, it's specifically for that pump, and
That LED will
the
come on.
LED comes on when it's enabled. But so this turns, we'll turn one boiler, two boilers on, depending on the hot water needs. This decides everything. When we get a signal back from any valve in the building, it turns the boilers on. So everything goes through this main panel. So it's monitoring outside air temperature, hot water temperature, and any signals coming back from any valves in the building. So when a valve opens, a thermostat calls for a valve to open to let some hot water through. It goes through here, and this turns the pumps on. This also does the control of the domestic hot water system. The domestic hot water tank is tied back into this, and this will turn the pump on, and it will turn the boiler on for domestic hot water, which is a separate settings. It has separate settings than the hot water system itself for heating the building. So this controls the functions of all of that.
Can I interrupt for 1 second? So that switch should always be on,
Yes,
Right.
this is a switch for power for the.
power for that, and this switch is the power for the pump, I assume that's the water
Yeah, we're gonna
heater
go with
pump.
the water heater in a quick second.
So
Yeah,
that should always be on.
Yeah, well, you're required to have a service switch in case if you have to work on the equipment, you have to be able to shut it down somehow. Same
Right.
thing with that pump over there. If you have to work on any pump, you have to be able to shut the power
Right.
off to it. So that's per code. So that's why everything it's pretty much a service switch.
So, just the purpose of that switch on the panel there is just to,
It kills the power to this panel.
basically the whole system will go down.
Yeah, everything will go down. If this switch is turned off, we'll lose all the functions of the boiler. It all goes through this system right here.
Okay.
So we don't want to be turning switches off. These are strictly for if you have to service it, or if there's a problem, it's by code, we have to have a switch so we can disconnect the power.
I mean, it might even be worth us having a sign on there, right?
Right.
Do
Well,
not-
don't shut off, but I
do
mean,
not-
Yeah,
but no one should be shut,
Right, no one should be touching any switches down
any
there,
switches, there's
right?
really no, the only switch is to switch the pumps over, it's the only switch that should be touched.
That and thermostats.
I mean, if this switch got shut off here, if someone came by and flipped this thing off, even though my red LED comes on, that pump won't function, you won't have any domestic hot water.
It's a maintenance switch.
So
Somebody, again, you gotta change, this is the domestic hot water for the building now. Review it from the start here. So the domestic hot water is fed from the boiler system. It actually branches out and acts like its own zone. It has its own circulator pump. It has its own thermostat on the top of the tank, which is set to 140 degrees, which your kitchen needs. So there shouldn't be any maintenance involved with touching any thermostats, touching everything else is set by code to deliver the water that you need right now. So what happens when this thing calls for heat, its own circulator comes on, taking water out of the main heating loop, heating an inner coil of copper line, which then goes out to your domestic water system. So that's the pump for the heating loop. Has a service switch for maintenance only. Again, you have an LED light that's telling you when it's in operation, when the unit is calling, which ties into the Tecma main control panel. But if it ever needs to be serviced, again, the same thing, the power would have to be shut off. You can pull the pump out, put a new one back in, and be back online. The hot water coming out of this system goes into a master mixer valve. You have two separate lines. You have a 140 degree line that leaves this tank and goes directly to your 3-bay sink for the kitchen use and utensils, which is mandatory by the Board of Health. 140 degree water then comes over to a master mixer valve, which will go through and go back out to everything else, all your hand sinks and your bathrooms, bringing it down to about 125 degrees. All this is already preset, should be all set, shouldn't need to be touched. But on this dial, as you can see, it's warmer and colder. As you turn the unit, it'll do exactly like it looks. If you needed warmer water for some strange reason, it doesn't take much. A couple of notches will bring this thing up a couple of degrees. It's not going to happen instantaneously. The water has to be running, and then a couple of notches up will bring the water temperature up. But again, this is already set to about 125 degrees, so nobody's going to get scalded at the sinks that aren't being used for kitchen use. Expansion tank for the domestic hot water, again, same as the boiler system, has a small ball inside. Just gives this unit a little bit of room for expansion, somewhere when that water heats up, somewhere for it all to go. There is blow-off safety devices on this. There's a copper line and a temperature pressure relief on the top. If there's water coming out of the copper line in the back, that should be a service call that something's going on with the tank. It's either getting too hot, too much pressure, or even the spring is just getting old on the T&P valve, which happens after about 2 or 3 years sometimes.
Wow.
That might need to be replaced. There is a purge setup also on this, which is basically, should only be used on startup. There really isn't any big maintenance to these units. Everything's self-contained, and once it's going, that should be about it. You got to be a little sensitive. There is a dial on the very top of this unit. That is the setting for the tank itself to be at 140 degrees. And I believe it actually has a red point showing where it should be, recommended to be about 140 degrees. Again, that shouldn't have to be touched. If it does, you know, something's starting to fail in the unit, it should be looked at.
Manufacturer, Steve, and model of
That's
the
a
unit?
Roma Clean Ultra Plus Superstore or tankless, which operates in conjunction with the boiler itself. It doesn't have any gas. It just uses warm water from your heating system. So that means that heating system will be running during the summer months, so you can't actually shut this system off, because this functions in conjunction with your heating system. But these main pumps don't have to function. These will be able to shut down in the heating season because it has its own pump that'll take the water and do its own thing.
Do you recommend that we shut the main heating system pumps off?
You shouldn't have to touch anything. This unit, the control panel itself will tell you it'll do it all itself. Once the outside air temperature hits a certain temperature, it basically shuts down. So you really shouldn't have to do anything during the summer months at all.
There's no need to alternate the pumps in the summer months?
No, they won't be running.
No, they shouldn't be running. Once it gets above about 65,
60
60 degrees, this
60.
thing's going to shut down.
60.
That's the set points that were set by the church themselves. At 60 degrees is, you know, sufficient. You can always override by going to your thermostat and bumping it up. But
So these main pumps, we should be alternating during the heating season only?
correct, even in the fall and spring. So depending on, you know, the whole spectrum of heating season. Obviously, summertime they don't need anything at all. But once it starts in the fall, spring, yeah, you come down every month. They switch one over. Just take turns on the pump so one doesn't get total wear and tear. The other one gets nothing at all.
Does it make sense for us to keep a clipboard, Steve? You know, like pump 1, pump 2, and just keep a record of which, you know, maybe on the wall?
You might want to know who did it last.
That's a good idea.
Keep it next to the.
Steve, one question out of the way. The fire department, we had a problem with the smoke alarm in that small little room. They came down and the fellow from the fire department thought the water was too hot because a lot of steam was coming out. I checked the temperature and it was about 140, 142.
All right, the last piece of the boiler that I can think of is this is the main water supply for the heating system, for the heating system only. So what you have is a backflow preventer, preventing any of the water that is used for heating water to come back into your drinking water system. And in front of that, which you might not be able to see so well, is it's just a regulator regulating the pressure going into the boiler. Again, shouldn't have to be touched. There's a dial cap on top of it, so nobody can do it without trying to move it. It should run about 15 to 18 pounds in the heating system, and that's about it. What happens on this sometimes, if there's a spike in pressure, water pressure somewhere, this thing is going to spurt water and kick it on the floor. So it's really not a leak or a break, it's doing its function. If this water pressure on the city side falls below what the other side is, you're going to see a squirt of water. So again, it's not broken. It's doing its function as it's supposed to. So give it a little bit, and then everything should be back online and fine. Typical operation, obviously, you shouldn't see anything. Everything should be just fine. And that's about it. Nothing on the gas main. That's all your water mains, the pumps, the control.
Now, the manufacturer of this control unit, Brian,
It's a Tecmar.
Tecmar, is there a model number or anything?
Yes, there is.
265.
And we've got manuals for that as well, right?
Correct. I gave you everything you got. You got plenty of literature on everything.
Is any of this stuff in PDF format by any chance, Steve?
And actually, a lot of this is stuff, almost all this stuff is available online. If
Yeah.
you can't find anything at all,
Yeah.
you pull up any of these make and model numbers, and you can download anything that you're missing or can't find at home.
All right, so again, let's see, we get that Tecmar, what was it, a 265 for the
Correct.
controller
And
unit?
that's right on the unit itself. The same with all the other equipment.
You want to just go over the model numbers while I got you here? And,
Yeah, on the unit, these are tagged out pretty simply. It's a Royal McLean Ultra Plus 60, which there is another tank on top of the tag on
it's
top
the
of
hot
the tank.
water heater.
It's the hot water system, which the tag tells you exactly the model number and make, and the front tells you the same. The boilers themselves, they give you the manufacturer's name, and inside the cover, which is just 2 screws on the base, this plastic jacket comes right out. There is a an IBR plate which will tell you the BTUs, how big the boiler is, its capacities, and everything else. So any further information is inside the unit so that it doesn't get all banged
Just
up.
quickly, do you know what the model number is on those boilers?
This is a 230.
Wheel McLean 230.
Yep.
Great. So we got two of those Wheel
Yep.
McLean 230s. Let's talk about the main
There-
shut-off valve for the
Yeah,
gas.
the main shut-off for the gas, again, not that that should be touched by anybody, but for any circumstance, outside the kitchen door is where the new gas meter is. In front of the meter, there is a shut-off that shuts off the entire building. Again, nobody should be touching that unless there's some
Emergency.
major emergency going on. The 2 boilers have their own gas shut-offs in the back of the boilers. There's one in each one and 1-inch feed coming down. But again, that's not something anybody should be touching unless you see some major emergency that something's wide open somehow. I don't foresee that ever happening. There is a gas main that runs across the boiler room and up through the kitchen to your kitchen equipment, which again we'll look at later, with shut-offs to your kitchen equipment and everything else upstairs.
Okay, these are the 2 thermostats, 2 of the thermostats that are around the building. These are the only things that really could be touched by, these should be touched if they need to be. Well, they're all pre-programmed per the schedules that I received, so they basically run themselves. They heat up when they're supposed to and shut off when they're supposed to. But there are override switches on them. The manuals here, it's pretty simple. It's a touch screen. It's a touch screen, and when you do want to change the temperature, it actually asks you how long you want the override for. So you actually put the time in. So, and that's basically all you do. You just, it's in the manual. I already went over it. You really can't see it from that how to do it. I mean, it's, you can raise the temp. It has arrows. It's touch screen. Raise the arrows. It's let's see. Yeah, permanent. These have already been changed. It looks like they've already been changed. They're on.
What makes you think that?
Well, because it says permanently it's on hold, so they're not on a schedule right now. I don't know why they're like that.
Somebody's touching the permanent hold.
Yeah, I mean maybe these things should be well, I don't know. But yeah, I mean it's set for let's see, set to 71 for heat.
So, Brian, maybe you can explain that you actually set these on a schedule,
Yes.
but right now somebody has taken them off the schedule.
Yes, right now they're off the schedule and they're on a permanent temperature. It's set for 71 for the basement, and the hall is set to 68. And these it'll never change the way it is right
in
now.
other words, night or day, we're at that 71 degrees, and that should not be.
No, because we had a schedule set in here, so it turns down. It only runs a few days a week. It's between certain hours.
So as soon as you press schedule again, take it off permanent hold,
Yeah,
it should run as it was set up. It should
Yeah,
run.
I'll have to release it. I actually have to.
Just go back to it, and
Yeah.
it'll always do that. So if
Yeah.
anytime somebody does press it for hold,
Yeah, so
Is that an easy thing to do, Brian, to
Yeah,
put on
yeah.
a schedule?
yeah. Well, it's on schedule now. It should be on schedule now again. Hold until let's see what I can do with the hold days. I'm gonna have to go through this, put it for 0 days. you
Who's
know.
the manufacturer
That-
and
that-
model number of this?
This is a Honeywell, and it's your model TH8000.
small manual, we'll leave the manual there. You have more manuals in your other guide,
Now,
in your book.
now these are the same thermostats throughout the building. These 2 thermostats have a remote sensor in the space. Like up in the hall, there's only a remote sensor, so there's no adjustment made up there. It's all done down here. It's reading the temperatures up there. Also in the basement, there's one remote sensor. That's why these 2 are down here. That way, it can't be touched up in the spaces.
Sorry, Brian.
Yeah.
The only thing I was gonna say is that the basement on the classroom side,
Yeah,
the office area has its own thermostat.
Yes,
And
yeah.
the church has its
Correct.
own thermostat.
yes, the office has its own thermostat, similar to this, and it just does that area.
Yeah, that's where they mark basement and hall.
Yeah, so they're marked basement in the hall, but I mean, and the office has its own thermostat. All right, so, yeah, so these two thermostats here have remote sensors. These are the only two that have them. Because up in the hall, you don't want anybody touching the thermostat, so it just reports back to this one. And these are on a schedule, which was predetermined, and they can be overridden very easily by turning the temperature up and down, and it'll ask you how long you want the temperature to be at that new temperature for. And then after that, it times out and goes back to the schedule again. The only time these won't go back if someone puts it on a permanent hold, which it was on. It'll stay till someone releases that hold. So there's really no need to touch these unless you really want to override it or use the, off times you want to use the hall or
Now, can we
basement.
default back to the program that was
Oh,
set before?
it is back. The program doesn't change.
Now, what is it, just schedule? Just press the schedule button?
No, it comes back up. Once you lose your hold, it goes back to schedule.
So it was on hold.
It was on a permanent hold, so someone set it so it permanently held that temperature until someone
So
released
do you
it.
press the schedule button, or do you press?
No, I pressed the hold button and it released it. It asks you how many days you want it for.
So
So,
one press is to hold something, and then the second hold is to release the hold.
yes,
Schedule.
correct. And there is a manual up here if there's any questions, but there really isn't much you do with these things other than you may want to raise
You
the
can read them
temperature.
as they go. It's all display
Yeah.
screen. There's plenty of information right there.
And it's
on it.
pretty simple, and they all operate the same way, so once you do one of
Brian,
them.
maybe you can tell us what that other
Uh,
dial is.
This thing was actually an override, which isn't really functioning right now because the thermostats do the override. We talked about this. It was like a redundant override, which doesn't make sense to
I
use.
think that was with the original design of the heating system,
Yes.
which we already had, and then we did modifications to do more zoning. So this basically, at this stage of the game, really doesn't need to be doing anything, but
It doesn't actually do anything because we're using the thermostats as an override. I
Should
mean,
it be removed? Or?
well, I could remove it. I mean, we
I
could.
mean, what is your feeling about that? Because
Yeah, it
just
doesn't.
confuse us.
It doesn't do anything, and there was no function for that because it's all done through the thermostats.
Okay.
So it can be removed. It was an override for the heating system, but this all does all that.
Jim, would it be a good idea to remove it?
I think it's okay the way it is, as long
Yeah.
as everyone's aware of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to do to it. You don't touch this. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It is a
So
clock basically. It doesn't
if
do
we
anything.
could dynamo that saying.
Yeah.
Did you say dynamite, Mark, or
Yeah.
dynamite?
Dynamo. Dynamo.
Yeah.
Not dynamite, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this was actually another override, but it's all done through the functions of the thermostat. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, I think we're all set, right?
Yeah. And that's it. I mean, we can.
Go to the.
You can change it to strictly cooling.
Now we're talking about the air conditioning, I'm sorry, I turned
Yeah.
it off.
yeah.
Okay.
So we're talking about air conditioning now.
Okay. Are we on?
Yeah. now
Okay, there is a system button on here, which you can go to either heat, cool, or auto. And on the auto, let's see, that's heat, off, cool. I thought there was an auto on here. Let me just see. Okay, I'm wrong on that. You hit the system button on these, and you have the option of shutting the thermostat off. Every time you hit it, it gives you a different option. It'll give you a heat option, a cooling option, or an off option. So you'll see the option that's up on the screen right now is flashing.
You know what, Brian? So what was the question again now?
Well, let's show you. There's a system button on here, and it flips from heat to cooling, or it will shut the thermostat off. It gives you the every time you hit it, whatever option is available is flashing. Like right now we're on heat, and you can hit done, and we'd be on heat. Okay. We'll hit it again, and there's off. It just shut the thermostat off. I mean, there's no reason you'd want to shut it off, but you could always shut everything off through the thermostat. This thermostat will do everything. And then there is also a cooling mode. So every time you hit the system button, it gives you a different option. You hit done, and it selects that option. And that's basically all you need to know about the thermostat. I'm going to put it back on heat mode.
That's functioning for air conditioning as well.
Yes, and this is the only one. All the other ones are strictly heat. There's no air conditioning
So this is
for these
the
other ones.
thermostat on the right side.
Yeah, it's
facing
marked
the wall.
hall. It's marked hall. So
So is that right thermostat that's going to control AC only?
in the hall, yes. Just as the hall, yeah.
That's it.
Okay. And Mark, do you want to go through the programming right now, or?
Well, I have to actually.
You mean for the air conditioning?
Uh,
Or just, how do you operate it? I think Brian explained it.
Yeah, we already went, yeah, I mean, well, you have to flip it over to cooling to start with. Hit system till cooling's flashing, hit done. That puts you on cooling mode. Then whatever schedule we put in here takes over.
Okay.
I mean, we have to hit, you know.
And then after that, Brian, it operates the same as the heat. You can.
Correct.
You can,
Override
adjust
it.
by 3 hours.
Exactly. You can set how long you want it to override for. It does the exact same thing the heat does, just on cooling.
Okay.
And it'll be automatic once we have the schedule. You won't even have to worry about it.
Right. How about just explaining for the video
Yep.
the fact that how you would adjust the temperature up and down?
Okay, the temperature up and down. Well, this is the hall thermostat. Has a remote sensor, so any changes in temperature is done down here. This tells you what the temperature of the space is, tells you what it's set to, what the temperature it's looking for. So the set point out there is 58 degrees, and the room itself is 68 right now. It's fully automatic, it's on a schedule, it'll come on certain days of the week between certain times. If for some reason you want to use the hall at different hours, it gives you the option to override the temperature. There's an up and down button. You can raise the temperature up. Every time you hit it, it moves up to your desired set point. And it also asks you what time you want the temperature to stay there till. You have the option of going up and down, go to 6 p.m., or you have the option of picking the time. So when you do an override, it gives you the option how long you want the override for. Then it'll go back to normal operation automatically. If for some reason you decide you don't want the override anymore, you hit cancel. There's a cancel button, and it goes right back to the schedule. We're following the schedule again. So it's pretty easy. You can turn the temperature up and down, decide how long for, and after that it goes right back to its schedule. I don't know if there's anything else you need to know on that. There is a system switch on it which switches from heating to cooling, which has to be done on this thermostat. During cooling season, you'll want to select cooling. You keep hitting the system button, and the flashing menu item is what's available. So when you get your desired item, you hit done, and it selects that item. So you're able to shut the thermostat off, go to heating mode or cooling mode through the system button. And that's basically all you touch on this thermostat. You don't want to touch there is an automatic fan on it. You want to leave that to auto all the times. You don't want to touch that, because that unit has a fan on it, and this is controlling the function of the fan. How was that? There is a book available to tell you about the thermostat, which is stuck on top here, so you can refer to that if you have any questions about this thermostat.
Okay, and again, it's a Honeywell. What's the
This is a Honeywell TH8000, and this is the only thermostat used in the church, in 4 locations total. 2 here, 1 up in the church itself, and 1 at the back.
In the conference room, the main piece of equipment that we're going to look at the moment is going to be the ERV unit, an energy recovery unit. Now, the function of the ERV is mandated. You need fresh air in a room that has no windows, that has people congregating in the room. So what this unit is doing is going to be taking outside air, pulling it in through this unit that we have, and as it's pulling air out, they're going to cross through a filter box. So it's going to kind of recover any heat that's in the room, tempering the air that's coming back into the room. So you're not having 100% stone cold air in. You're trying to recover what little heat you got in the rooms and then exhausting it. So you're changing the air in the room for an air quality issue. So with the button on the wall, if you come into the room is kind of stuffy or stagnant air, you just touch the button once in the dead center of the button. 1 touch in the center of the button is going to be a 20-minute run. 2 touches is 40 minutes, 3 is an hour, depending on what's going on in the room. And then after that, it should shut itself back down. You know, enough time to recycle the room. In a room this size, it really shouldn't take too much. A 20-minute touch on that thing should recycle this air and at least get some fresh air and to get the germs out of here in satisfactory condition.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the beginning part, Steve, but what is that? I understand what that does. It turns the unit on. What is that?
The thermostat itself on here is connected to the heat coil that is in front of that unit. So when you turn this thing on, there is a small, very small heat coil in the front of that unit. That again, it doesn't meant to heat this space. It's just tempering some air. You're not taking in 0-degree air. It is going to be kind of cold because it is fresh air, and it's the only way to get that air in here. So the function of it is, as the unit comes on and blows air, that small heater coil is going to heat the air up as it's passing through the unit, through the heater coil, and then coming into your room. So it's going to temper it a little bit. So the setting on this is really not an accurate what it's going to give you, but I mean, you might want to leave it on the high side so that small coil is going to fire up as hot as it can, as fast as it can, especially on those cold days that you want to change air. Obviously in the summertime you want the opposite effect. Just leave this thing in the down position, almost all the way off, so the heater element doesn't come on. Because right now, is if the fan is blowing, the heater coil's coming on. So in the nice warm days, leave it down. You can get a quick breath of fresh air in here on a warm day just by touching that button. It's going to recycle the air in here.
Is there any way to turn it off, Steve, in the summertime? It seems like you might be wasting energy with it kicking on.
I got to see if there is. We do have the manual. We'll review it in a second. I just got to make sure that it seemed that we couldn't get it to shut off unless it was just going to run its cycle once you touch the button. Like I say, one touch was 20, 40, 60 minutes. For every touch, it bumps up 20 minutes. We'll take another look. I'll look at the manual. Maybe there's something not right with the wiring that it's staying on. We'll try it once real quick. So that should be 20.
It's on.
That should run for, in theory, that should run for 20 minutes and shut itself down.
And will that light always stay on, Steve?
Yes.
Okay.
For the full 20 minutes.
For the full, well, I believe it stays on permanently, just so you know where it's at.
And all you do is just touch the middle of that button.
Correct, just the middle of the unit, right on the little picture that it has.
Yep.
So there's 40 minutes.
And then we can hear it run. If you want to shut it off after you've
60
started
minutes.
it, Steve, can you do that?
That's what we're looking into. I'd have to take a look. I'll grab the manual right now. And we left this on high. And then we'll go. All right, just to touch base back on your ERV unit and the control switch panel is to get fresh air in here. At any point in time, it's a three touch control. One touch in the center of the panel is going to give you 20 minutes. 2 touches is going to give you 40 minutes. 3 touches is an hour of continuous run. To shut the unit down at any point in time is to touch the center of the screen and just hold on to it for 5 seconds, and that should shut the unit off. Again, the heat and thermostat is just a small electric heat coil in front of the unit, which is going to give you a little bit of tempered air coming in, so you're not going to have stone cold air coming in on the cold days. Summertime, you probably just want to leave this thing in the off position all the way down. Then you would take advantage of taking in any outside air at, you know, decent temperatures and just refreshing this room with some moderate air. All right. Yeah, if you want to take a look, I might be just in the paperwork is there that I had downloaded. The air conditioning systems for each one of these units, you have one for the conference room, one for the office, and one for the priest office. They all have their own individual controls.
What kind of air conditioning units are there?
This is a Sanyo split system, which the 3 components share one condenser, which is located outside. And every control on the inside is going to have its own remote control and its own unit hung on the wall. On these remote controls, which is basically just a thermostat that you can hold and take off and walk around with, these can be set up in a couple different ways. One is to have them come in and hold a pattern, like a temperature hold, set your desired temperature and you walk away. Or on a office like this, like the conference room, where you're not using it every day, is hey, to come in on demand, turn it on, put your set point. When you're done, touch of a button, just turn it right back down and you're done, so you're not constantly cooling this area all the time. And especially if each one room is on its own, it's definitely going to save you some time and money there for that. And we'll go over the AC and the fan mode when we kick up the system. We'll go over all that again later.
Okay. And then we haven't talked about the air handling yet in here.
Why don't we let him do his thing, and then what else? You got nothing else down here, right?
What else was there, Mark? Just the individual, how about the heat? Again, everything's controlled through the thermostats and the boiler.
Correct. This room, on your heating system in general, you have 4 zones. You have the zone. One zone is going to be the administration area, which is going to be the conference room, priest room, and the main office. Is on its own zone. That thermostat is going to be located in the main office, which will control these 3 rooms and a small piece in the hallway, maintaining temperature on whatever her set point is. The other zone is going to be the classroom zone, which that thermostat is located in the boiler room. So there's only a sensor on the wall that shares in the classroom. So there's nobody can touch the thermostat near the classroom area. Third zone is going to be the hall, which again is a sensor in the room only. So any adjustment has to be made from the boiler room. In the boiler room only, the sensor is only going to pick up what the reading is for heat and air conditioning in the building, and that's the only area where you have heat and AC. The 4th zone is going to be the church itself, which is located, the thermostat near the altar, which will control heating to the radiation out there only for the church. So again, set points, everything's been set up to what was given to us for a times on, time off, and temperature settings. So you should be all set with that.
Steve, I think you also did say that in order to really maintain the temperature in these office areas, you should keep the doors closed to keep the heat in, because the hall doesn't have
it's not, yeah, we're not meant to, the heat that was designed down here is not meant to heat the hallway. You do have a piece in the hallway to keep the chill out, but I mean the desired temperature is in the rooms, not to heat the hallways. So if you keep the doors closed, again, you're saving energy. You don't need a heated hallway per se. Tempered is fine, but to get a good reading and make sure that the thermostat's going to work the way it should, is going to be to leave the door shut, and that way you're conserving.
Okay, so
and,
the Sanyo air conditioning unit for each room is right here in the corner. What do they call that unit, Steve? Where Mark is right now?
Yeah, I guess the blower unit, I guess what you would call this. It would just be the blower unit where the condenser sits outside. This is just where the fan motor is, and individually has its own coil that's going to pump cold air strictly and only for this room, connecting to that thermostat. There are small filters inside these units that need to be cleaned on occasion, again, depending on the use of the unit. You know, you have to take your own judgment to take the units apart a little bit. We'll pull the filters out. We'll get into that when we fire these units up, is how the filters come out and how they get changed out.
All right, so recommended schedule on change?
It's all on use. I mean, if it's something like the office, you're probably going to look at, hey, maybe once every month. Something like this where you don't use it a lot. So I'd say probably more based on how many hours the unit's seeing than anything else. And then there's only a service switch on the side basically for maintenance. I mean, if in the summertime you turn it on and leave it on, and it won't come on unless you are calling, just like any other thermostat. So if you need AC in the room, the switch can stay on once the heating system's season, you want to cool down, and then rely on the thermostat. But in a room like this, if you want, hey, shut it off on your way out, certainly wouldn't hurt either. But
okay, so that's one switch that we can touch.
That's one switch they can touch on, off, power to the units. Every unit has to have it. It's more for a service switch. For maintenance, if somebody has to look at these units, all power should be off.
Okay. And Steve, how can you go over to the air handler unit so we can show people?
Yep, in the closet is where the ERV is located. So the first component you're going to see is going to be the first thing you see in the inside of the room here is going to be the first section is the heater coil, which is an Indico electric heater coil, which is just in line with your fan unit sucking in outside air. As the air comes in, it passes through that small heat coil, discharging that air into the room. And on the bottom is the air being pulled back out of the room. And as they both go through this box, they somewhat crisscross, but they do stay sealed, stealing any warm air, tempering that air as it's coming in, and discharging the bad air. Inside the unit, there is filters that should be looked at, again, depending on use of the unit. There's 2 latches on the top of the unit. The unit has a safety switch. So if you open the unit, even while it's running, it's going to shut down. So if you open the 2 latches, you slide the door slightly to one side, it comes right off the hinge for easy access. There are 4 screws to take the whole filter box out for later on when you might have to replace the whole unit. But right now there are 2 smaller filters that can come out more like a fiber filter. They can come out and be replaced. Sizes and everything else are in the manuals. We can probably even write them down on the boxes somewhere, that so in the future somebody can see what sizes you need before you get going for maintenance. The small switch that you see in the front is the safety switch, that if somebody has this panel open, the fan's going to shut down so nobody gets hurt. And there are damper motors on the supply and return air. The fresh air coming in from outside is here. Exhaust air is on the other side. You'll see on the tops that when they're not in use, there is actually dampers that will go into a closed position so that you don't get some drift air coming, just blowing through this unit and dumping into the room. So upon use, the dampers open up fully, and then the unit comes on. You're pulling air in and throwing air out. The only maintenance in here, there shouldn't be any maintenance at all inside the electric heat coil. Shouldn't be touched by anybody that's qualified to be touching any kind of equipment on this thing, especially. Very dangerous. Not any major voltage, but again, you don't want anybody touching that. The only maintenance should be in here is the filter itself. Again, depending on the use and what's going on and how often it gets used in here. You can take a look at the filters and see how clean they are. We'll write down some sizes and write them right on top of the units and give them information where to get replacements. The thermostat for the main office and the administration area is located in the main office on the opposite side of the wall over here. And you also have the same AC unit, all three units, identical units, with a remote control thermostat on the wall, with the main component on the opposite wall. Same as the other rooms, you can have these at a set point. You can set them at a comfort zone and leave them there, or you can do it on demand, which rooms this size shouldn't take too long to cool on and off. There's probably no necessary to leave these things running all night. I can't imagine this thing not being able to cool off where she's here every day and come in and turn it on in the morning and cool down within an hour. So the main thermostat for the administration area is located here. For anybody who wants to change anything in the offices has to come into this room. And main thermostat for the
For heat in the office.
for heat, yeah. The AC is the other one on the wall.
On that remote control again.
Correct.
Okay. Anything else in the office, Steve?
I don't believe so. That's it. Just heat and AC.
Okay.
Yep.
That's it. I think that's it, Jim.
And as far as the switching between seasons, Steve, is there anything that we need to know as far as turning the air conditioner off or turning the heating system off and then transitioning over to AC?
As long as Mary doesn't or anybody doesn't have the set point for the air conditioning below 70 degrees, which shouldn't happen.
Which can happen.
Which, so to double check, your heating system is basically on standby all the time. So if for some reason somebody throws this air conditioner down to 65 degrees, your thermostat's going to pick that up. It's going to fire to try to heat the room. So that's only one thing to think about when they do turn the ACs on. Is it should be about 72 degrees, should be a comfort zone that everybody should be able to maintain.
But Steve, doesn't the main loop on the furnace, wouldn't it have to be above 60 degrees for that furnace to go on?
This can override it if you wanted it to. So I mean, even though that's telling it what it's doing and it shouldn't come on, but if it senses this room for some reason is coming up to going down to 65 degrees, it's going to say, okay, you know, I want to heat this one room. So now it's going to override what the boiler's telling it. The main pumps will come on, maintaining the system. But again, usually the set point is air conditioning at about 72, heating is usually about 68 to 70. So there's always about a 2 to 3 degree differential where you shouldn't have that overlap.
Yep, okay.
But
A
day,
Yeah. Concern sometimes is humidity. Our papers, you know, curl up, say over a weekend or something like that.
yeah, I mean that's you know, you guys' discretion as far as how much you want to run this and what you need to keep everything, you know, for your office to run, you know,
All right.
properly. So yeah, you could set that thing down to a temperature where you're comfortable and that's not going to mess up anything in the office, obviously. So that might be an idea, is to maybe not turn it off, is just to turn it up to, hey,
Yeah.
turn it up.
So maintain a minimum temperature.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I mean, like I
You know,
do
keep it at 74 or something, that it's
do
not
at
too
home,
crazy, but
it's,
not
Yeah. Okay.
a comfort zone, but not,
What do you recommend, Steve? I mean, so Mary's objective here is to keep the humidity low in the summer, right? Particularly here in the basement where it's gonna get.
you know, and you have a lot of paperwork, and, you know, this is where it's, you know, you have a lot of activity going on in this one particular room, and probably the same for the priest office, find his own comfort zone. And you know, economically, if you're in and out of here almost every other day, it is, if you try to run it a steady temperature is actually the way to go.
So what do you think, maybe 75 or 76 in the
You
summertime?
know, you know, but I'm gonna tell you that this area stays pretty cool in the summer because it's a basement.
Right, but you know what the issue is, Mark? It's just
What?
the humidity,
The humidity, right.
right? And the
But-
paperwork.
Yeah,
You know,
I
The
think though,
papers literally
They'll-
curl.
yeah,
yeah, but not, you've had that upstairs, Mary, but I
I
don't.
had that upstairs too.
but that'll
But I
happen
think
even
you can have
more
lo-
down
No,
here
it happened-
because of
Yeah.
mildew.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it happened even more down here.
Yeah, okay.
You know, we moved, when did we move in? I was on the other side, excuse me.
Right, but you had no air conditioning over there, you know?
No, but the humidity, remember we brought in the humidifier?
Right, right,
The
Dehumidifier.
dehumidifier,
Yeah.
and boy, that, a lot of water came out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the AC will take care of most
Yeah,
of that, yeah.
yeah.
It's not, you know, it's not its overall function, but it will take out some of that in the air.
I think keeping it at least running to some degree.
Yeah, might be the way to go to keep everything in the way. Like I say, it's gonna stay cool down here on its own to begin with, so.
I think we'll just have to, you know, see how it goes.
Yeah, you're gonna have to play with the temperature.
What do you think, Steve? Like maybe maintaining a minimum temperature of 75 or 77 when no one's here?
Yeah, keep it, you know, keep it at something like that, and then when she comes in, you can always bump it down for working conditions. If it's too much, hey, go down a few degrees. That way you're only deviating, hey, 2 or 3 degrees, 4 degrees when you wanna come into work. But when you're not here, you're not, you know, you're not cooling the place off crazy, just more using it for a
As long as it's
dehumidifier.
dry.
Right.
If it's dry, you know, I'm dry, you know,
Well, we'll start out with the primary source of heat for the hall itself and partially the kitchen is an air handler unit that's in the ceiling. The temperature control for this area is the thermostat that's located in the boiler room labeled hall. In this room, you only have on the wall is a sensor only, so that nobody really knows what temperature your set points are. But if you get out to the boiler room, you'll see exactly what's going on, and you can make adjustments accordingly. We'd have too many people up here poking at the thermostat if it was located in a room like this. So what happens in the heating season? This air handler unit that's in the attic and in the ceiling space is actually taking in outside air, and it's going across a large heat coil and then blowing the air down through the air registers. And now, in the hotter days of the summertime, the heating obviously shuts down. You have an air conditioning coil that's in the same location in front of the heating coil. The opposite effect, the AC coil is going to get cold, blowing air that's recirculated from the room and a little bit of outside air, blowing down into the room. Now, I've also installed in what they call the economizer mode, is that if the temperature outside is sufficient enough to cool the space, the air conditioning will not come on. The dampers will open up and basically just take outside air and push it through your unit, cooling this place down using just outside air temperature. So at the moment, we do have a slight dilemma with your existing dampers have been in the closed position for a long time. We tried to spray them with oil. We're trying to loosen them up because the new motor drive that we've installed isn't even strong enough to move the dampers. So we'll be looking at that this week to see what we got to do with the damper situation.
Is that something we can help out with in any way? I mean, is there some way for us to?
The only thing, like I said, I climbed up there and I squirted everything with WD-40 in every single joint that I could find and see. And then,
You need some
Steve, do you know where the ladder is so you can get up there?
yeah, you got one hanging outside. I saw that one, so I can climb right there. I'll bring in mine, and then hopefully that'll start to jar it up. I can squirt it one more time and give it another shot. You know, sometimes it takes that, but other than that, we'll have to take a look. I don't know if you got to take the louvers off the front of the building to reach into the dampers. Would probably be the easiest if it had to be replaced. We'll have to take a look, and I'll get some idea next time I'm up there what it's gonna take. It shouldn't be too bad. Just where it's in it's a weird spot to get to. That's the biggest hassle. It's up in an attic space. So, what else do you got up in here? You've got all right, now your air handler at the moment used to service the church and the hall for air conditioning reasons that you had a manual switch that you had to pick and choose either the hall to cool, or you could pick the church. At the moment, the ductwork has been disabled going to the church because of roof leaks and the roof replacement. If that system gets back to original state, the unit would come on. The thermostat is set from the boiler room using this sensor only, and you'd have to hit the manual switch that is still active in the hallway. It says damper switch church hall, which would divert all the air coming out of that air handler unit. Instead of being dumped into the hall, it all gets diverted and goes, everything 100% goes to the church. So you have to pick and choose where you want to cool. From the boiler room,
Came out of the hall here, and
you came out of the hall, and this is your manual device here for the what you have to pick and choose for either heating or cooling either the church or the hall. So if you want to cool off just the church, you have to bring the switch all the way back down. It says church. That shuts off 2 dampers that shuts off all airflow to the hall and in the kitchen and diverts all that air to the church. The normal operation that you guys have now is typically everything is going to the hall. So the motorized damper shuts off the church and only dumps into this general area. And this air also provides air for the basement, into the classroom area only, with ductwork above the ceiling area. So there is some air conditioning for the basement in those areas, and at least some fresh air being dumped down through. And that's when it's on the hall mode. Church mode is strictly only the church. Nothing gets dumped downstairs on church. The main control for the thermostat for the church and the church only is the radiation. There's radiators on all 4 corners of the church, and there's also radiators behind the altar. If for any reason you get an area or one of the radiators is too hot, there are manual shutoffs to each radiator, which typically shouldn't have to be touched. Everything should be coming up pretty evenly. I think we've sensed already in the beginning, though, that the altar gets a little warmer than they want it to be, which can be throttled down just by closing some of the valves just a little bit, not 100%, but just by tweaking it down so it's a little more even heat. The thermostat, again, is just like every other thermostat, all similar here. On the wall, it's already preset, pre-programmed for the time frames that they need in here. The thermostat that is above that is the old air conditioning thermostat, which I believe is not active. The air conditioning alone from here is going to be activated only from that air handler unit from the hall ceiling, which was just tied in with the new thermostat and sensor. So that's going to be something you're going to have to kind of just play with. And when you're satisfied with temperature, is go turn the thermostat off down the boiler room to shut off that air handler unit. System in here, there really isn't much for heating and AC. There is no separate, you don't have any kind of a separate zone in here for heating. The residual heat that you guys were already talking about is from your stove. We have set up the stove system so that the pilots are on all the time. So in doing so, you have about at least 10 pilots running all the time. And you're heating up cast iron and heating up steel, so that heat is just radiating out on a constant basis. So even when you come in the door, you're feeling heat, and you're going to feel that all the time. There is 2 registers in the back of the kitchen, over the refrigerator and over the other sink, that do provide some air conditioning and some heat for this space.
what zone is that, Steve?
That is tied in with your hall zone.
So that would be right above the refrigerator, then right above the coffee machine. Those are the only 2 outlets we have for AC in the kitchen.
AC and heat, correct.
AC and
You do have a back door for air conditioning. The biggest thing in the kitchen is probably going to be the gas and the gas pilots, which we've already run into some minor problems. Is just a sequence of operations that when somebody is going to use the kitchen equipment, in particular the griddle and the cooktops, all the ovens, is that they have to come in and they have to turn on the exhaust fan system, which at the moment is marked A, which turns on the exhaust fan that goes through the hood. And then they have to turn on the solenoid valve, which allows full pressure gas pressure so all the cooking can start. So I'm assuming the labeling will become complete, sticking with the same scenario, A and B, and then you can turn on the stove or the oven. If for some reason somebody does not follow that sequence of operations, and they come in and they go right to the stove or right to the oven, and they turn it on, what's going to happen is all the pilots will be blown out. You will barely have enough gas to start one burner, but every other pilot will go off. Now when they turn it back off, thinking that it's broken, all those pilots are going to be left dumping gas into this space. So that the importance of the sequence of operations is pretty big in here, especially when you don't need any exposed gas just being dumped out. Somebody could walk out of here, and that the hood will take care of some of your gas problem, but gas does settle down. So they have to make sure that that's a priority in this kitchen.
So Steve, once the cooking gets completed, is there any time in which they need to turn the fan off, or as soon as the stove or ovens are turned off, they can immediately go and turn the fan off?
As soon as you're done with everything, and you can even leave the fan on to cool the room off, because obviously after cooking it's going to be warm. When you're done with the place, you got, again, opposite, but you got to do the same thing, is make sure all the burners are off, all the stoves are off. Then you can turn the fan off.
And there's no need to touch the gas valve?
The gas valve itself will shut off when the A switch shuts down. That's automatic. And also, as far as when you come in, it has to go in sequence of A and B, because the wiring is such that it has to go through the fan first as a safety device, that if you don't turn on the fan first and you try to turn on the gas valve, it won't let you. It will not release a full gas unless that fan is in the operating position. Now also tied in with that fan is the makeup air unit, which is located in St. Irene's Hall in the ceiling, which is going to deliver fresh air into the church behind the stove, so that when the air that's being sucked out of this room is only the air that you're using to burn and combust. That's all automated. That doesn't have to be touched. That ties in strictly with the A switch when that exhaust fan starts. The fresh air fan also kicks in, which you'll see that behind the units, the stainless steel grate, that is where the fresh air dumps in, is behind the stoves and comes from under the stove, creating a natural draft that everything that's all carbon monoxide is being sucked up and out of here. But again, that has to be turned on first and turned off last, so that you don't blow out the pilots.
This is safety, Steve. Can we look at the pilots? Like right now, I can see a couple of the pilots lit on the stove. Is there any way for us to check and see if all 10 of the pilots are all lit?
Everything on the cooktop, you can see them pretty plain. There are 10 on the tops. Every burner has its own pilot. So you can visually see them. The ones in the back, you might have to bend down a little bit, but you can visually see all 10 pilots from the top. The griddle has 3 pilots located under the stainless steel, which you can look through the peepholes. If you look, there's 3. You can see those are all lit. And the same, no, the other peephole is for pilot's lights. And then the ovens, you have to, they're all similar or pretty much the same. Is just open the unit up. There is a peephole. If you look in, that's going to tell you that the oven pilots are lit and standing pilots are on those. So again, if something does go out, if some reason somebody doesn't follow the sequence, the pilots are blown out, every single one of these pilots has to be relit, including all the ovens. Your convection ovens do not have standing pilots. This is an electronic ignition, so if that does go out, does fail, these do not have to be relit. These are all set.
When I was down here with you, Steve, when you came back on that service call to relight the pilots, you had shown me some gas valves behind those convection ovens. Do you want to just point those out right now, the purpose of the valves?
The main solenoid valve that we're talking about with the A and B switch, the B switch, which is to power up the solenoid valve, which means
this is for the gas.
This is for the main gas. So what happens is if there's no kitchen use going on, the main gas supply is in the off position. It's off. The solenoid valve is in the no power mode. So when you power up the solenoid valve from the B switch, it actually lifts up the valve automatically, and it's going to open up gas to go through the 1¼ main that feeds all the gas equipment.
So how is gas delivered to the pilot, Steve? Is there a secondary?
There's a secondary. There's a T taken off in front of the solenoid, which you can't see too well, but there's a 1/2-inch line in front of the solenoid valves, which means there's gas 24/7, which that 1/2-inch manifold goes behind the stove, and then has their own individual shutoffs to each piece of equipment and is modulated in almost a closed position so that only there's enough gas to sustain pilots only. So that's why when somebody comes in, if they turn that unit on, even though there's a pilot, there's only enough gas in there to sustain pilots. And if you turn on that burner, you could snuff out every other pilot, because all of a sudden you've got a demand to one area and it will snuff everything else out.
So we should not be touching, no one should ever go down.
There is no maintenance with this solenoid valve. There is no maintenance with the pilot setup. Anybody that's touching this should be qualified, licensed personnel to touch anything on this gas system behind the stove. And if something isn't working properly with the A and B switch, again, that's somebody that should be called in here for a service call. Certainly nobody should be touching. This is all high voltage lines on this, on the fan side. There is no maintenance on the inside of this component. The only other maintenance you might have in this kitchen is going to be cleaning the hood itself, cleaning off the grease cups located inside the kitchen hood. And there is also a grease cup that is located up next to the fan outside on the roof that has to be dumped out periodically. Pilots, they made a decision based on that. For use for the kitchen is that your other option was to have, every time you were done cooking, you shut the fan off, everything would shut off. That when you wanted to cook, you'd have to come in and light every single pilot on this piece of equipment. So the plan was to run the secondary piping to maintain the pilots for convenience. But the pilots have to stay lit. When you see the pilots underneath these burners and underneath that griddle, and I know it's warm, it's hot, there is some danger of somebody maybe getting slightly burned, but you cannot just blow the pilots out. It's not going to save you any gas. What's going to happen is that gas is still being released. So now you're going to get a gas buildup in this kitchen because the pilots are out. The valve is only in the open position only. It doesn't know that you blew it out. I mean, we set it up as a safety device that it only has enough gas to sustain pilot lights. That's
so again, the number of pilots, we get 10 on the stove, we get 3 under the griddle.
And
how many for each oven?
1 under each oven.
1 for each oven. Okay, so we got a total of
16 pilots.
So we should count and make sure we get 16 lights that are continuously lit.
Correct. Maybe.
Steve, here's a question that, because this is going to come up. What sort of cost do you think the church has incurred by leaving these pilots on all year round?
I couldn't tell you that. I don't know what kind of gas consumption. The equipment manufacturer might have a better idea. They'd have a better idea of.
I don't know if we want to film this, but you can cut this out, Jim. But the other thing we could do is we could, you know, especially in the summertime, we could shut them all down, Steve, you know, and then the only thing that if they wanted to do in the summertime, they wanted to use one of the stove pilots, they could, you know, light it like you would it with a match, like you do your chocolate
How do
roll
you
at
do
home.
that?
Well, the problem now is how are you going to shut off the pilots? You can't touch those valves in the back.
No. How you would shut off the pilots is you'd do the opposite of what they're supposed to do. You'd actually turn one of the gas things on and not turn that off, and everything would go out. I mean, to shut off all the pilots, right?
The only way to shut off all these pilots, which, again, check with the manufacturer. I think there is some regulation to each pilot behind these plates.
Oh yeah, you can turn it down, right?
I don't know if they can turn them off, but I know they can. Some of them there are adjustment. Whether or not
I think you can turn them off, Steve. You know, if you turn that.
I'm not 100%. It's not, it's not my equipment. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Right.
But that might be the case. You might be able to get away with that. But you got to remember, the valves in the, it's all or nothing. You can't,
Let me just give you a...
unless there's shut-offs that you can see and do and kill to each one.
Let's say we shut all the pilots off by going through the procedure of not lighting that, leaving these on and not turning on the...
Yep, the pilots go out.
Pilots go out. Now, in the summertime, I want to use one burner. I turn the gas valve on and the hood on, and then I just come here and I hit this, and it will light like the old gas stove used to
It
light.
could explode, because what you've done is you've blown out the pilots.
Right.
That pilot gas is gonna keep on coming. It doesn't.
No,
No.
the gas valve is off now.
Correct. The main gas valve is off.
Right.
But that half-inch feed feeding all your pilots is always on. Even though if you come in, you turn these on, and the pilots get snuffed out,
Yeah.
they're not off.
Right.
Gas
just-
continues to flow.
The gas continues to come.
Okay. So now I only want to use one. Can I just turn one on? I mean, I know the other ones are leaking a little bit of gas, but what would be the problem with just turning one on?
Explosion.
If you came in, like I say, if somebody came in, turned these on, says, oh, the stove doesn't work right, forget it, I gotta leave, turns everything back off and leaves, blew out all these pilots, that gas is keeping on coming. And now that gas is gonna build up in this room.
Right.
Now you come in
What
and-
you have to do is shut the,
That has nothing to do with the pilots.
That's the main.
Now you're gonna walk in here the next day and you wanna light something, there's gonna be gas all over the lower half of this floor. And that could explode. That's the fear of that's why it's very, very crucial that they gotta follow the sequence of operations with the pilots, standing pilots, and that they understand that how volatile, that can be if not used properly.
you know what I see, Steve, is a problem here. In the summertime, this room's going to get extremely hot with the amount of pilots we have on here. I mean, it's going to get very, very hot.
My only concern is that
Yeah.
one is that you don't want to be playing with the gas. It should be either you're gonna keep it
On
or you're
or
not.
nothing.
Because the more you try to do anything with seasons and people, and you're throwing more stuff into the mix with something that's very, very dangerous. And again, the communication is tough in a place like this.
So Steve, it seems to me that the thing to do is if we want to just control the equipment that's operational for the summer, it seems the thing to do is to turn off, as we talked about,
Gas
all the
feeds.
manufacturer's instructions, the gas feeds at the particular equipment.
If from the front side, there are shutoffs in the back, but those should not be touched to the pilots, because those are set almost in the off position that they only sustain pilot enough gas to give you a pilot.
Right, but Steve, there is, on the flexible holes, there is a shut-off there that we could turn. Let's say you want to run only one stove, you could turn off.
You shouldn't touch anything behind that stove. Again, don't think anybody in here should touch anything behind that stove. Again, even for you guys or anybody, you guys shouldn't even touch anything in the front of that stove. You're going to create a bigger problem because you're going to have, maybe you'll know what's going on. And somebody said, well, Mark did this and he did that and he did this. And now you got people taking the panel off and opening up things, and God knows what's going to happen. In the summer mode, I don't know.
Well, I think
It's not here in the winter. You can imagine how hot it's going to be in the summer.
I think the thing we have to do is make a decision as to which equipment we want to have operational for the summer. And if we don't need all the equipment for the summer, like we just need the stove and those two ovens, let's just leave those pilots on, let's leave certain pilots on, and then we can turn them off with the equipment instructions.
I thought, Steve, once the pilot was off, that the gas would not continue to flow.
Not for a pilot.
Not for a pilot.
A pilot is only telling the unit, like on a water heater is a little bit differently, where it has a pilot, and the pilot relays a message to the gas valve and tells it, yes, I have a flame that you can open.
Yeah.
You don't have that in cooking equipment,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Commercial equipment.
Yes, I mean, there is a lot of talk that they're going to make electronic ignition for even this equipment, which is going to be the way to go, with all this conservation talk. If you're worried about heat in the summertime, my only recommendation would be to pull a couple of these panels out and let the heat drive out and out of here. Even it's got a minimal restriction now, But if you open one of these, you got a natural draft. It's coming straight up. It's in the hood, and let it flow on out.
Yeah.
I don't, without getting into having people knowing what they're shutting off. And anytime you're playing with gas, and with the multitude of people, it's just it worries me.
I agree. Okay.
And if you can find the pilot things, hey, you might be able to shut down this whole stove, or maybe shut down a couple of the burners with the stuff in the front. And like I say, maybe just leave one running. Hey, if you know you got a big thing coming up, hey, you come in, somebody will have to be designated, hey, light all the pilots back up.
We should only have one person, Mark. You're right.
I think that, we'll check with the manufacturer, but I think that little set screw will shut the feed off to the burner pilot. So maybe
I believe it does.
Yeah.
And I think they have individual like those there.
Right.
They have adjustment, which I'm saying maybe if most of the time you're not using much, hey, leave these two on and leave that one section on. Shut off the rest.
Right.
But they'd still have to follow the sequence. But then if you know you got a big thing coming, somebody's gonna have to come in and relight the pilots though. That's the thing. Oh, I forgot to light the pilot table. But he's in the kitchen screaming, yelling, "Oh, the stove isn't working. Where's Steve?
Boom.
Yeah, yeah. Now you got to be playing with the fan and gas valves and.
No.
Yeah, there's no easy scenario, unfortunately, with that. But
well, I think the thing we have to do, Mark, is just have one person that can be responsible for altering the sequence. And that one person needs to be in touch with Steve and the manufacturer of this equipment to understand exactly what's going on.
talk to the thing and ask them how much gas consumption you're losing. Is it worth your while?
Yeah. I think the big issue, though, Steve, is, like Mark said, is this kitchen's going to get hot. It's not so much gas consumption as it is how hot is it going to get in here, and we're going to be fighting a battle with the AC. And
You can always turn on the fan, regardless. If you come in and it's warm for you or them, just turn the fan on.
Yeah.
That's going to suck the heat right and open that door.
Grease traps.
Now, Steve, it's my understanding that the health department, they want that service once a month. We're not going to do that.
I don't know what as far as maintaining a grease trap, it really doesn't fall under much of our category. It's going to fall under, again, you got to use your head as far as, hey, you're not an everyday kitchen here. You're a part-time kitchen. So like everything else in here, it's going to be upon use, and then you'll find your own niche that you'll know what your recycling end of it's going to be. And you're going to have to talk to the health department. I don't know if they do any kind of an inspection on it, but where you guys are limited
we have
use.
a sheet here that when the grease trap is clean, the fellow's supposed to write in the time that he cleaned it, the date he cleaned it.
I mean, as far as if they need a sheet, it's only one bolt. You take the bolt out, pull the lid off, take a look at it. You can probably make a pretty decent judgment of what's going on. At least you can say, hey, it was visually inspected. But as far as taking it out and cleaning it for the amount of grease that you guys got on a month-to-month basis, probably isn't worthwhile to try to take it out and clean it. So I mean, hey, once every 6 or 7 functions in this place, you could probably then think about doing it. But then after a year or so, you'll know when your peak times were and how much grease you really came up with. Yeah, over here is the clipboard for the grease trap, the maintenance for the grease trap. And next to that is the permit from the Board of Health for the kitchen itself, that you're up in good standing and operation.
Oh yeah, that might be something Steve could explain to them, because they didn't know how to operate that, Jim, is the
sprayer. The sprayer is set by the temperature that you want. You got to get happy. Open up the faucet to what you want, and then you switch it over to the sprayer. So it shuts the water off to that, and this should operate at the handle at the temperature that you are satisfied with. Now that's the temperature that you already dealt with. Now if you don't like that temperature, open the handle back up, readjust it, get happy with what you want, shut the faucet back down, which is only killing water to the spout. This is still active. And this is also adjustable. A little bit, not much. So that's just the water, and you can still adjust as you're spraying. So as you're going, if you don't like it, you can still just tweak it forward, get more hot water. The only issue with these is that you got to make sure that you do shut these off at night. You can't, it's not a good idea to leave the water on to the handle with these spouts open. What can happen is the hot water will come up through the valve and start going into the cold water system because it's expanding and has more pressure than the cold water. So all of a sudden you could be getting warm water out of a cold water spigot, you know, say in the hand sink next door or somewhere else down the line. So it's always a good idea to just to make sure they're in the off position 100% when they're done.
Start off by talking about the dish machine, and this dish machine operates automatically. There's a soap, feeds automatically, and in back of the soap bucket there is a gallon, as you can see back there, and that is a sanitizer. So what you have, automatically the soap goes into the dish machine and the sanitizer goes into the dish machine, and every time you operate the dishwasher, it pumps in soap and sanitize automatically. And the dish machine is very simple to operate. You simply pull out the rack, put in your dishes, close the rack, and push the start button. There is a button that you have to turn on and off when you're starting the machine and shutting the machine off after you're through using it. And that button is right here, and there's an on and off switch. So before you can use the machine, you have to turn it on there. After you're through with it, you should shut it off there because that operates the booster that brings the rinse water to 180 degrees to sanitize everything going through the dish machine.
Mark, can you point to those again, those switches on the bottom?
Yes, the switch is right here, Jim. One of the things you should do after turning off the switch, after you're through using the machine for the day, you should leave this door ajar so that we have some air circulation in there. We don't have a buildup of mildew. So I'm just going to put this rack away here, Jim.
Now, were there two switches down there, Mark, that I saw on the dishwasher?
Just one.
There's just one switch
Right.
in the middle.
There's an off. It's a switch that goes on and off. And actually, Jim, you'll hear this when you turn that on. It sounds like the machine is starting, but it isn't. It's just putting water into that booster area on the machine.
Okay, and then the manual auto on the left, that'll always stay on auto?
Say that again?
There's a switch on the left side that says manual and auto. On the left side down there, that always stays on auto?
Correct. Always on auto. Right? And we have the sink has 3 bays, and the health department had us mark the bays so that you have a wash sink that would take the soap and water, a rinse sink that you would rinse the soap from the in the process of washing, and then a sanitizing bay where you use 5 of these tablets for sanitizing the products that go in there. And up here it explains to you how you do that. You add 5 of these tablets, mix it into the water, and that's used to sanitize the items that you wash. Now you don't have to sanitize those anything that goes through the dish machine because the dish machine sanitizes everything. But if you're washing pots and pans that don't go into the dish machine, are too large to go into the dish machine, you would then have to go through the cycle of wash, rinse, sanitize. And there is litmus paper here, Jim, that you test whether the sanitizer is proper. The booster, we should talk a little bit about the hand sink. All right, another requirement by the town is that we have the town health department is that we have a hand sink dedicated to the washing of hands. As you can see, there's a sign here that tells you that this is a sink for washing your hands. Also, we're required to have a bucket here so that when you wash your hands, we have paper towels here, and after you dry your hands, you put the paper towels into that bucket. I think the only thing I would like to point out here is that there is a a sink here, a mop sink, and this mop sink, after you get through mopping the floor, this is where the dirty water should be dumped. Again, a health department requirement. Standing in front of the vegetable preparation sink, by code, the health department requires that we have such a sink strictly for preparing vegetables. And you're not supposed to wash your hands or do any other preparation here except for vegetable washing.
Mark, what's the purpose of the drain on the bottom there? I don't...
Again, the drain on the bottom is because the health department requires that this not be tied into a drain, that the drain be separated so that there's no chance of contamination coming back up into the drain and contaminating the vegetables. And this is also set up like this for handicap access. Somebody with a wheelchair could actually come to the sink.